Sounds good.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library, and I'm always thrilled to be doing programs with Sarah Robertson Barnes of Sustainable in the Suburbs. And I live in the suburbs, so I especially appreciate her as she talks about being more sustainable, being more conscientious and mindful of our surroundings and the waste that we produce. Today she's going to be talking about the holiday season, and I can't wait because we were just talking about how much more waste is produced during the holidays than any other time of the year. So before we get to Sarah, I just want to say a couple things. I'd like to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting our programs. We just couldn't do it without them. And to Sarah for letting us share this program with other libraries. And I think, like, as usual, like 20 or 30 signed up. So, welcome to the patrons of those libraries as well as from Ashland. And of course, Sarah's fans, because I know she shared this out as well. Sarah does have a presentation, so she's going to be doing that. I'm going to be turning the chat off during her presentation, so there's no distractions. You can just pay attention. I'll turn it back on when she's done, and if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen at any time, and I will ask Sarah once her presentation is done. So some of you may know, but some of you may not, that Sarah is a sustainability warrior living in Canada, making changes in her own life and showing us how easy it can be. And sometimes a little bit hard, but worth it. Sarah, welcome. I'm so glad to see you again.
Hi, Mina. Thanks so much for having me back. These are my favorite webinars to do.
I feel so good about that. Okay, I'm going away.
Every time Mina gets in touch, I'm thrilled. So here we are.
Love it.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to talk tonight about how to have a green holiday season. And as Mina and I were just discussing, this now starts in October with Halloween, although I've seen people posting about Halloween since August. So it seems to take up quite a bit of our time and our money. So let's get started on how we can reduce waste and also save yourself a lot of money this holiday season. So my name is Sarah Robertson Barnes. I am the founder of Sustainable in the Suburbs. I'm a sustainable living expert, and I'm a content creator and a writer and a speaker and all those sorts of things. I live in Toronto, in Ontario, Canada, but tonight I'm in Quebec City for a really cool sustainability thing tomorrow, which I'm really excited to share with everybody. All right. Let's start with Halloween. Do you want to hear a scary story? Halloween produces 12 million pounds of textile, plastic, and food waste. And the food waste there does not include pumpkins, and we'll talk about that in a second. So this statistic is just US based, and most of this is single use. So Halloween is basically meant to be disposable between costumes and little wrappers. They all typically end up in the landfill. So let's talk about that. Okay. So the three main things in Halloween that are creating the most amount of waste that I just talked about were costumes, treats, and our decorations. So I will be sending an email out after the talk with links to blog posts that I have on all of this stuff. So if you wanted more information, it's there. And then, of course, you can email me as well. Let's start with costumes. This is where most of the plastic and textile waste actually comes from, is single-use costumes. You start to see them popping up everywhere in August, Amazon, all that kind of stuff. And they are typically worn once and then thrown away. So essentially single-use clothing. And then you add in the masks and the wigs and all that stuff. And you can see how it's just a bit of a disaster. So some tips there on costumes are do it old school, make your own. I was once a tomato that my mom made out of a big piece of red canvas and 2 pillows. Still my best costume to date. And shop secondhand. I really can't stress this enough. Right now, thrift stores are chock full of Halloween costumes. I was just recently in our Once Upon a Child, and they had 2 full rows of costumes from infants up to size 16. So that would fit my 13-year-old. And they're at a great price, and they're just waiting to be reused. This one we are just doing with the Eco Club at my school this year, which is to organize a costume swap. We have a bunch of costumes in our basement from previous Halloweens, from playing dress up, all that kind of stuff that don't fit the kids anymore. So we've been dropping them off at racks in the lobby of our public school, and anyone can just grab a costume from there. So it's completely free, and they're keeping costumes in use and out of the landfill and helping underserved communities as well. A typo, rent one. So if you want to be something ultra specific, there are pieces available for rent. And these are all ways that we can keep things that already exist in use. The second sort of bugbear for me is the treats. I typically purchase either foil wrapped, because that little bit of aluminum foil is recyclable as long as you make the ball big enough. You can get a zero waste box. That's through a company called TerraCycle, and that's for sort of flexible food wrappers. So you can fill that with your kids' little chocolate bar wrappers. You can also put granola bar wrappers and things like that in it. And when it's full, you ship it back and they'll turn it into something else. You could split that with a neighbor, get one for your child's classroom, something like that. Or you can hand out alternatives instead. I still remember the neighbor that gave us out full cans of pop. And that was a huge score, definite crowd pleaser, and it's recyclable. So you can just think of different ways to hand things out. But if that's not something that you're interested in, like, it's fine. I'm not going to tell my kids they can't go trick-or-treating because I don't like the waste. I just sort of find ways to deal with that. And for decorations, now I started seeing these go up in the stores in August. And to be perfectly honest, I want the 12-foot skeleton from Home Depot, but I don't need it. And I can just reuse the one little skeleton I bought at the dollar store 10 years ago, and that's totally fine. The other option, of course, is the all-natural decor, your pumpkins, gourds, corn stalks, things of straw, that sort of thing that can be composted or even eaten after use. So this is a recap of what I just said. I also bought, if you see the little pumpkin guy here, I can buy those in bulk at my local bulk store as well, so there's not that excess packaging. And the one thing that I didn't cover is to eat your pumpkin. The pumpkins that we grow for Halloween are food, and we don't typically eat them. So if it still looks okay, it probably is okay to eat, especially if you haven't carved all of them. You can roast them, puree them, and keep that in your freezer to make things for Thanksgiving with. And anything that is your natural decor you've been using for Halloween would look great on your Thanksgiving table. Gourds last a really long time. If you have them outside right now, this is my porch on the chair there, you can save them for Thanksgiving as well. For decor outside on your porch or on your table. Oh, I have on here avoid spider webs. You know that stretchy, looks like cotton, but it's actually plastic. Try to avoid that on your outdoor decorations because it is really deadly for birds and for insects. And of course, it's single-use plastic. So try to avoid that. Okay. So our Thanksgiving is on Monday, but I know yours is in November. So between Thanksgiving in the US and New Year's Day, US household trash increases by 25% versus the rest of the year. And that's roughly 5 million tons, which is about 12 million pounds of trash that is created during the holiday season. And the picture that you see here is our wrapping paper that my family uses. It's all cloth. We'll talk about that in a sec. Okay. The biggest contributor is food waste. And I promise you, you will not run out of food. So the main theme of tonight, the too long didn't read, is don't buy stuff and watch your food waste. Because American households waste over 300 million pounds of food on Thanksgiving. It's a single day, and that's about 1 pound per person times a few hundred million people is a lot of food that's going to landfill. Nothing breaks down in a landfill, not even food. So we're going to save money and keep food out of the landfill by buying less. The 200 million pounds of turkey that's wasted is there's honestly no excuse for that, along with all the other things. So the gravy, the dinner rolls, the vegetables, all of it. I know that it's a feast of abundance, but that can quickly tip into wasteful. So that's something to be mindful of when planning your menus. Okay. I recently published a post on this that I will incorporate in the email that Mina will send out to you afterwards. But these are the three things that are going to help you to prevent your food waste and, save you money on the amount of food that is just going straight into the trash. The first one, I hate menu planning, but you have to do it. There's lots of great calculators online to help you figure out how much food you actually need per person for a Thanksgiving dinner, and really stick to that. Keep it simple. You don't have to have 7 different side dishes. Just keep the ones that are really simple, hearty, and that can be made into something else afterwards. So, for example, your mashed potatoes and vegetables can be made into a shepherd's pie afterwards, things like that. Consider doing a potluck. That's what we've been doing in my family and my husband's family for the last few years, which is everybody brings something. And I find that has reduced the amount of leftovers simply because you aren't overwhelmed with the amount of food that you have to make. And serve less. I'm so serious about this. I think that we all have the experience of having way too much food left over after every party, every holiday dinner, etc. You will not run out of food, I promise. So whatever you end up thinking you need, take it back just a little bit and you should be good. And of course, prioritize your leftovers. So as I said, we do the potluck thing, but we also all bring our own containers to be able to take home some of everything afterwards. And it took a while to sort of destigmatize that with my mother-in-law. But it's a thing that we do now. So we all take some home afterwards. We can freeze it. We can make it into something else. And then that way someone's not overloaded with food that they have to deal with immediately after dinner. And always the easiest thing is to throw it in the trash. But with a little bit of advanced planning, you can avoid that and still have food left over. Okay. So I sort of went really quickly through Thanksgiving. I know that it's a much bigger deal in the States versus where we are here, but it is that the food waste piece is the biggest amount of waste during Thanksgiving. The holiday season is a whole other ball of wax, though. We have decorations and gifts and travel and all of that kind of stuff that we do feel like just so much pressure to purchase. And that's not your fault. That's how we're sort of conditioned to be as consumers. So it's a little bit of working on that. But here are some ways that you can avoid things that just end up in the landfill. If we're going to be spending almost $1 trillion on food and gifts and decor and wrap and trees and all of it, we don't want to be throwing that money directly into the trash. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about is gifts. There are lots of sustainable gift ideas. I think that we all really stress out about what to buy for people that they're going to use, that they want, or that they need. But the truth is, like, we all don't really need we don't need anything. Everything that we need already exists. So let's put a different bit of a spin on it and give sustainable gift ideas that are not just like sustainable for the earth, but will mean something to that person and be sustainable in their lives and their homes. I am a huge fan of consumable gifts because everybody loves food. That can be a gift certificate to their favorite restaurant. It can be homemade treats. Like my sister-in-law will send my kids cookies and things that she bakes in reused takeout containers for their birthdays. And it is always a hit. They rip that box open to see what Auntie has sent them this year. I also love to do gifts in jars. So you can see in the picture here, this is my Christmas tea blend. I also have other ones for soups and cookies and squares, and they are always a huge hit. And I can make those at relatively low cost from the bulk store, and then you get a free jar. So those are my favorites. Food. The next one is give with a warm hand. This is something that my Nana taught me. she would gift us things from her home that she wanted us to have. And she would write a beautiful handwritten note in each one to tell us sort of the provenance of it, who gave it to her and what their relationship was and why she wanted us to have it. And those are things that I still keep in my home and are very special to me. And one of them was actually a silver serving dish that I bring out at Christmas, and I think of her every time that I use it. It's very special. Also consider giving secondhand items. I love trolling the thrift stores for cute little pottery things, things like that, that I can then add in bath salts or whatever it is to build a special gift for someone. And I found some beautiful pieces, and folks know me and they know that it probably did come from the thrift store. So see if you can challenge yourself to destigmatize that a little bit, especially for kids. Every brick of Lego in my house is secondhand. My husband's amazing at that, finding that on Marketplace and what have you. They're just thrilled with the thing, with the Hot Wheels track or whatever it was. They do not care that it came from the thrift store or Marketplace or what have you. So really consider that for kids as well. And of course, experiences over things. My in-laws got my kids passes to Six Flags, and we went every week this summer. So I need a chiropractor now, but they had a fabulous time. And every time that we went, oh yeah, Grammy and Grandpa got us this. That's so cool, that sort of thing. And that went over like a house on fire, and they'll remember that for years versus some video game that they played for 2 months for the same price. So consider things like that. Also, lessons. This was something that was really helpful to us when our kids were small. My parents would pay for their swimming lessons. Same idea, Nana Poppy paid for your swimming lessons and you're learning to swim. Let's call Nana Poppy and tell them how swimming went, that sort of thing. So it really is the gift that keeps on giving. Okay. Okay. The next thing is wrapping paper. Almost all wrapping paper on the market is not recyclable. Even if it has the little recycling symbol on it, that does not mean that it is recycled. It is likely not accepted in your local recycling program unless it is 100% paper. And really the only type that is 100% paper is sort of the brown wrapping paper that you get in a package of craft paper. The reason for that is that it is typically coated in plastic with the fancy patterns and the glitter and all that kind of stuff. And that paper is unfortunately not recyclable. Even though it's stuffed into recycling bins, it will cause that entire load to go to landfill. So wrapping is one way that you can really save a lot of money on that sort of thing, and also keep it out of the landfill. We're talking tape and ribbons and bows and gift bags and tags, and it's rapidly escalating. So I'm going to show you some ways that you can reuse constantly rather than repurchasing something that's just going to be trash every single time. I typically wrap in cloth, as you can see here, and I'll show you another option as well. Okay. So the 3 different ways that I like wrapping are using craft paper. So you can either, get a big roll, that's fine. You can usually get it at the post office, but I really like reusing the brown packing paper that comes in your packages. They put in huge reams of it and it's already crumpled. So I crumple it more and then it's like a look. And I use that with paper tape. Put that shut. And then I don't know if you can see there, it's very, very tiny, but it says Dave on that. I just got a bunch of tags and wrote people's names on it with a stamp. And I find that what has happened over the years is that they give them back to me. So now I just have a stack of all my family members' names and I can just reach in and keep reusing the tags, and they know they're from me because they're distinctive. So I really love that. This craft paper can be recycled because it is 100% paper, or you can compost it. So that's an excellent choice, especially during the holidays when you're getting a lot of packages from various retailers and you just have craft paper coming out of everywhere. So try doing that. My second favorite method is using a cloth. This is a Japanese method called furoshiki. And there's lots of great YouTube tutorials on this. All of the fabric that I use for it, I've just gone to the thrift store to the fabric remnants section, and I've just chosen basically just plaids in sort of, holiday colors. And we use them for everything now, for birthdays and for holidays. And again, same phenomenon happens. The folks who receive the gift fold it up very neatly and make sure that they give it back to me. And this inspired my sister-in-law to sew a bunch of cloth bags. And now it's just sort of the traveling wrapping cloth in the family, which is really, really cool. It can also be part of the gift. So, for example, if you find a really beautiful silk scarf at the thrift store or play silks for kids, that sort of thing, it can be part of it. And this is my favorite part of gift wrapping, is the little bits and bobs that we put on top to make it look fancy. I am a big fan of the dried orange slices and cinnamon sticks, which I can get at the bulk store for almost nothing. And just whatever I find outside. I love birch branches. I love dried flowers and pine cones and little cedar branches from my backyard. And all of those are compostable as well. Okay. For your holiday decor, I am as guilty as the next person of looking at all of the beautiful things in the store and, oh, I want to get some different bulbs for my tree or whatever it is. And ultimately, I just remember that I do really enjoy what I have and to resist that urge. And over time, that has sort of evolved into choosing natural decor, not just because it's compostable, but I just think that it's beautiful and it evokes the feeling in my home that I want to have, to bring some nature in from the outdoors in the Canadian winter. So go foraging, go outside with your kids, with your loved ones, and find a little bit of cedar, some birch branches, some twigs, pine cones. Don't buy packaged pine cones that are free on the ground. You just have to pop them in the oven for about 20 minutes and they're dry and open and beautiful. You can find lots of cool, really aromatic things at the bulk store. Again, I said cinnamon sticks are my favorite. I also love stringing up popcorn and cranberries for the tree. That's really fun to do while you're watching Muppet Christmas Carol, for example. The big nuts, all of that kind of stuff can really make your home feel very holiday without purchasing anything that's going to end up in landfill. And of course, get crafty. If you are a crafty person, or even if you're not, you can make holiday decorations out of things you already have. So oranges, every year I go to the reduced produce section in my grocery store and I find like the sad oranges and they make beautiful dried orange slices. You can make things, if you're a knitter, I knit a bunch of Christmas trees last year and they're my favorite thing right now. You can even make things out of what you might think is trash, but with just a little bit of ingenuity and a glue gun, you can make some really cool decorations. Okay. This was like the most controversial thing that comes up around the holidays in terms of what is the most eco-friendly holiday tree. And the answer is, it depends. So if you love having a fresh cut tree, if that is your family tradition, you love the smell, whatever it is, that's fine. The holiday trees are usually run on small farms, so you are supporting local business when you do that. It is an experience when you go out to do that with your family and the hot chocolate and the tractor ride and whatever else is going on at that farm. That is spending time with your family. That's wonderful. And we go to the same tree farm every year, which initially I wasn't a fan of. I wanted to do a potted tree, which I'll talk about in a second. And I didn't love it. So we went back to cutting the fresh cut tree, and I'm really glad that we did. And these trees are always replaced. There's a constant supply, and they're really well managed, intentional planting for the most part, and trees are carbon sinks. So while it sounds a bit counterintuitive to cut one down, it is sort of cyclical. So it's an okay choice. If that's what you want to do, That's fine. If you already have an artificial tree, that's okay. Keep it in use for as long as you can, and that keeps it out of the landfill. Eventually, when that tree ages out for whatever reason and it's not able to be donated, then you can start looking into something else or investing in another artificial tree that you plan to use for a long time. I mentioned doing the potted tree. We did that one year when the kids were very small, and that was a good choice for us then. We ended up planting it at our cottage. So that's an option. And some places even have potted trees that you can rent. I've not seen that in my area, but it does exist. So that might be worth looking into for you. And alternative trees. I don't know if you've seen these on Pinterest or similar, probably, but it's like twigs that you can hang on your wall, or ones made out of birch branches or what have you. These can be really great for small spaces. They fold up really small to be reused year after year. So the most sustainable tree is the one that works best for what you have available to you and what it is that you're looking for. Okay, so like always, I talked really, really fast, and I just wanted to end on this, that you don't have to do this perfectly. Any little bit that appeals to you that you want to try, that's incredible. We're here to reduce our footprint, not eliminate it. And as I mentioned, I'll be sending out a bunch of information with the specifics on everything that I mentioned, but just do your best, and that's good enough.
I agree.
So as I mentioned, you can find me at, you can find me at my website. You can slide into my DMs anytime. And now we can do questions, Mina.
Great.
Yeah.
I do want to remind everybody you can put questions in the Q&A. I'll be pulling from there. And you always say things that really strike me, Sarah. Like I think it was the last time or the time before that, you said something about if you use it's only single use if you only use it
If you
once.
use it once. Yeah.
Right. So ever since then, anytime if I have like a sandwich bag or something, it's plastic, I just wash it and keep reusing it until it basically falls apart. So I feel like so much better about such a simple thing, but it really has worked for me. So I appreciate that. All right, so let's get into some questions. Somebody did ask in the chat if you would share your tea blend recipe.
Yes, definitely. I'll include that in the links that I'm going to send to Mina for the email that goes out. So right now I have, I think, 3 or 4 different ones on my site, and they're all linked together. But I will do the tea blend, and I've got different simmer pots and different baked goods and bath salts and all that kind of stuff. I'm definitely a gifts in a jar girly, but I'd be happy to share that in the email that Mina sends out.
Great. Marcy mentioned, you had mentioned that it's 200 million pounds of turkeys wasted, and it's such an ethical issue in terms of the turkeys themselves. It's not just like what goes into the landfill. It's like we're growing these animals to waste.
Yeah, there's the ethical concerns with the turkeys that are killed for meat that ends up going into either unpurchased or that equivalent ends up in the landfill. But it's also a tremendous waste of the resources that it goes into farming those turkeys, from the fossil fuels to the feed to the labor of the folks that are taking care of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the turkey itself, it's everything that's further back in the chain. So it's a real ethical consideration from every way that you look at it.
Yeah, it's a shame. Anne Marie says, how do you dry your orange slices?
So I started off drying them in the oven. And my 2 methods, we'll send out with Mina. So in your oven, you can do it on the rack that you cool cookies on, a cooling rack,
Mm-hmm.
on a cooling rack. So I slice them about 1/2 centimeter. I guess that's like a 1/4 inch, thin. And I do that on a mandolin just so that they're nice and whatever. Blot them with a paper towel, or a kitchen towel rather. And then you put them on the cooling rack because it's got air coming up from underneath. And you put those in your oven at about 150, 200 degrees for about an hour or two. Flip them halfway through, and when they start, you can feel it. So check them about every 20 minutes, and they last for a really long time. My huge garland that I showed you the picture of, I made 7 years ago. So I just store it in tissue paper. They will darken after time. But I think they just look better that way. So as long as you store them in an airtight container, they'll last for a really long time.
Okay, yeah, that was the last question we had also. But do you slice them? In what direction do you slice them? Yeah, I'm not like a cook or anything, so like, do you, like,
So the two ends, like how there's like the end that the stem goes in,
yeah,
you're gonna cut them like
that way.
this,
Okay, all right,
that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking the other way would be kind of weird, but I wasn't sure how, why.
Yeah, you could do lemons, limes, grapefruit, sort of whatever colors that you're going for. But I'm definitely, I can't stop with the orange slices. Every year I'm like, I'm not going to do it, and then I do.
How long does it take you to dry like a boatload?
I ended up buying a dehydrator secondhand off Marketplace. I got one of those like doomsday prepper huge ones. And I mentioned this in our food waste seminar that I use it all the time now. I just ended up drying a bunch of carrots, weird looking carrots that came out of my garden. I dried those and made them into a powder. I made tomato powder, things like that. So they dry in about 24 hours in the dehydrator. It's a lower temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. So Mary says, you would specify 200 degrees centigrade or about 350 Fahrenheit. Is that
Oh,
the?
it's in Fahrenheit. Yeah.
All right, cool.
That's
And
a good question. Don't burn them.
again, because I don't cook or anything, like I'm not good at it, I should say. Those kind of things are essential to me. Ginny asks, are most greeting cards non-recyclable? I know the ones with glitter can't be recycled.
Most of them are. If it looks shiny, it's been coated in plastic and therefore won't be recyclable.
Okay.
But you can reuse them. So if you get a lot of Christmas cards, consider, cutting out the cute little pattern on the front and reusing it as a gift tag, something like that.
Yeah. Diane says, I see so many Facebook posts in which people suggest throwing pumpkins out in the woods for wild animals to eat. It's incredible to me that it doesn't occur to them to cook pumpkins and freeze them. Is this just a US concept? It seems like folks are so used to buying processed food that they don't think about cooking from scratch.
I think so. I would not recommend throwing them into the woods for a bunch of reasons. Well, number one, a lot of people don't even live near woods. I know they can be toxic to hedgehogs, which I don't think we have here. Just something that I've been told. But also, you're risking bringing just don't feed wild animals. Don't feed wild animals. You can take them to farms where like goats will eat them, pigs will eat them, that sort of thing. If you really have no interest in cooking them, which is fine. So consider doing something like that. But the cooking thing, I think that's part of it, that we think food comes from the grocery store. And typically the only thing people make with pumpkin is pie. And for that, we use the canned puree. That comes from pumpkins. It's dead easy to cook a pumpkin, especially if you have an Instant Pot. Just chop it up. You put it in the Instant Pot with a bit of water in the bottom for like 8 minutes. And when it's cool, you can just scoop it right out from the skin, fire it through the blender, freeze it in your muffin tin. Each little like level at the top of your muffin tin is a half a cup. And then you can throw that in a freezer bag. And then when you have a recipe that calls for a cup of pumpkin, 2 muffin tin pucks. And I make muffins with that. I hide it in my kids' chocolate muffins all year long. And then by the time I'm through it all, it's Halloween again. But yes, cook your pumpkin, especially if your Thanksgiving is after Halloween. That's your pumpkin pie right there. So yeah, they are edible. They are food.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
I think also it's interesting, the question, part of the question of it, if it's a US concept is interesting to me because I know that we cook pumpkins in an Indian style, like with spices, and they're actually really good, including the skin. Like we do it separately, like, but it's really, really good. It's one of my favorite things.
Hmm. It's a
Um,
squash.
yeah, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
good. We
If
just
you
had
like butternut squash, you'll love pumpkin. Yeah.
I do love butternut squash. We just had a butternut squash with apple like puree yesterday, and it was so good. And I just
Mm.
thought, as you were talking about the pumpkins, I was like, that would be so good with a pumpkin.
Absolutely. Yeah. Applesauce, just do the same thing with a pumpkin. Add your pumpkin spice to it. There's no actual pumpkin in pumpkin spice. um, and you can eat it like applesauce. It can be sweet. It can be savory. You can put it in pancakes. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. You bought it. It's food. Eat it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was you that told me we talked about taking containers to, you said to the holidays, but I also take them
Hmm.
to restaurants sometimes and,
Yep.
you know, embarrass everybody, but I don't care, for my leftovers.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah. It's a weird thing that we have a weird stigma with that with taking containers. But if it's your family, it's not like your colleague's house or something like that. Bring your containers.
Mhm.
They're over. I hosted Christmas dinner last year for my first time, and I was overwhelmed with the amount of food. We had out of town guests, and
Mhm.
so they couldn't take it with them, and it was so much food, so much food. I was still dealing with mashed potatoes well into January out of my freezer. And that's how I learned. That's how I learned my lesson to not over purchase. I was worried about it. It was my first time hosting a big dinner, and I'm supposed to be a food waste expert, and I still overdid it.
Mhm.
So that's really helped me refine what's going to be happening on Thanksgiving dinner this Sunday.
Now, do you have you spoken to your family about, being less wasteful during the holidays and they have come around to it, or
Yeah.
did you just like go by example and eventually they were like, "Oh, that is a good idea. I'm going to do that too."
So it was both. When our kids were very small, we did have conversations about not overloading them with gifts. Now, I used my husband for this because my parents think my husband walks on water. So I got him to talk to them about it. Like at this time we were in an apartment, so we just don't have the space. We're trying not to have too much clutter, this kind of thing. We also do something called need, want, wear, read. I might have gotten that out of order, but it's something they need, something they want, something to wear, and something to read.
Okay.
Choose from those categories
Hmm.
so that it's not just random stuff from the toy store or a bunch of tat from the dollar store in their stockings, things like that.
Hmm.
When they ask, what do the boys want for Christmas? Be very specific, but try to stick to that need, want, wear, read, because it really limits the amount of gifts.
Hmm.
Now, with the experiences thing, so I mentioned the swimming lessons and the Six Flags pass. The pushback I got on that was like, well, they have to have something to open. They've got to
Hmm.
have something to open.
Right.
And so we started doing gag gifts where they went out and got like 6 boxes of mac and cheese and wrapped those in a box, but it
Hmm.
had the Six Flags pass in it. And my
Hmm.
13-year-old was thrilled about both.
Hmm.
He still
Um,
had a present to open, but
One of the things that we do, this is, and a friend of mine now does it too, is during the holidays, they do a scavenger hunt in the house with money. So they put
ooh,
like $1 bills or however what you want to do, like in different places in the house, and the kids have to go find it. And that's their gift.
I love that. And now that I've got two teenagers, that's going to come in clutch. That's great. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, all the kids have
But we're
loved
so conditioned that we have to buy, we have to buy, we have to buy.
it. Hmm.
You
But
don't.
it's such a like the scavenger hunt itself is an experience in that they are
Yeah.
running around together, they're busy for like an hour or so. It's not just like ripping open presents and you're done in 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. And they get, I don't know, a bunch of money at the end of it, depending on how much you want to give. Um,
Yeah.
it's a hoot. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there are like great experiences. But like I do think it's hard for us to pull back. So one other question I was gonna ask you is like when you're talking about limiting gifts, Do you
Mhm.
do it by number or cost? Or is there something else?
Yeah, that's something that's I think really personal to your family and your dynamic. With the kids when they were small, we did limit it to we tried. Um, and last year we had a conversation with all the adults saying like, we don't need to exchange gifts anymore.
Adults, right?
The adults,
Yeah.
yeah. Like with my sister and brother-in-law, that sort of thing. We just said like, why are we all okay with this? And everybody was like, oh yes, thank God. Let's do it. Now, do we still like, oh, I got you this pound of coffee or sure, like we're going to stay at your place, like we bring the wine and the coffee and that sort of thing, but it's not a list anymore.
Mhm.
So we focus on the kids and then we just enjoy it. And that has been a relief actually. So somebody just said it and then great, we agreed. You could also do a thing like, okay, all the adults, we're going to do a secret Santa.
Right.
We're going to have a $20 limit. We're going to do Yankee swap, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Things like that. So it is about having the conversation, which is difficult and may not work with some family members, but now is the time to start having that conversation because people are holiday shopping already. So if you're wanting to dial back on the amount of stuff that just gets avalanched onto your kids, now's the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with a wish list or a Dear Santa letter or whatever that gives people direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you talk to your kids about it? Because so many of our kids are very used to, and I mean, I always,
Mm-hmm.
what was it, on Harry Potter where it was his birthday and he was like, I only got 37 gifts. Last year I had 38, you know? So
Yeah.
how do you do
Oh,
that?
that's a good question because we've sort of always done this with our kids, but again, it's just about managing expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And that can start with getting them to, why don't you start thinking about your Christmas list? On Canva, they have a little template to do the need, want, wear, read.
Mm-hmm.
What's something that you really need? What's something you really want for Christmas? What's something you want to get to wear? Whatever the fashion thing is, what's a book that you're really interested in? It could be an audiobook. It could be whatever. Just to start getting them to think that way. It depends on the age of your kids, but you can also have those conversations. We really don't need more stuff. So what's an experience? Would you like to take an art class?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys want Six Flags passes? We asked the kids that and they were like, oh my God, yes. I was like, oh, you should ask Grammy and Grandpa for that. Work like a charm.
I love it.
So yeah. But it is a lot of this that we've been talking about tonight is mindset shifts
Mm-hmm.
and conversations about expectations. Because I think that inside we're all really like, it's too much.
Yeah.
And we have the power to dial it back.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever, I think I might have asked you this one time before, it was that one of my favorite children's books is called Too Many Toys by David Shannon. And it's about this little
Mm-hmm.
boy who gets toys everywhere, like at the McDonald's when he gets a value meal or
Yep.
whatever, at birthday parties, at Christmas, at the holidays, all of
Everywhere.
it. And then ultimately he likes playing with the boxes. And I just love that. So like it's not just the holidays where we're all, kids are getting a lot of stuff that they don't need.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is one place where we can lead by example. So at birthday parties, for example, we don't give out loot bags.
Hmm.
We again with the jars, we do jars of bulk candy.
Hmm.
I take the kids to the bulk store. They choose 2 or 3 things. They fill the jars.
Hmm.
And I've always had positive reactions from parents about that. Like, oh, this is so great. It's not dollar store crap. Like, and sometimes my kids come home with loot bags that I'm like, were these like $50 each? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you know it's too much. And I think that culturally we agree it's too much, but someone has to start the conversation
Hmm.
that let's be low key this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about, is it okay, like the holiday trees, here, at least they mulch them, like they put them out
Mm-hmm.
on the curb and they mulch them. Is that just as
Yeah.
good as anything else?
Yeah, that's essentially composting it. And then that mulch will be probably used, at least in my town, on municipal gardens.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
So the nutrients are, if it's mulched, and find out what happens to the mulch, but then it is going back into the soil somehow
Mm-hmm.
versus just getting sent to landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know the Toronto Zoo also has a program where you can bring your tree and then they put it in enclosures for enrichment. So
Oh.
it's funny to see like the pandas playing with the Christmas tree in the winter. There are different ways to dispose of them, but yeah, as long as it's not going to landfill,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a tricky one to get around.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of tree are you going to have?
Okay, so we just have a couple more minutes. If anybody has any
Sure.
final questions, let us know. But you were talking about the reason you're in Quebec right now is actually really interesting. It's a little bit on the side topic here as we wait for our
Yeah.
next. But can you just tell us what you're doing there?
Yeah. So I'm here with Cafe William, which is a coffee brand. They're based here in Quebec City, in Sherbrooke, Quebec, excuse me, but the port is here in Quebec City. So from sort of bean to your cup, they have instituted all these really cool sustainability practices. So they are working with an Indigenous growing co-op in Colombia. They purchase those beans and then they're being transported on a sail cargo vessel. So it's the largest sailing cargo vessel currently on Earth.
Mhm.
So it's being shipped directly here with no fossil fuels. And when it arrives at their plant here in Quebec, it is roasted using 100% hydroelectricity. And currently, all coffee beans are roasted with fossil fuels.
Mhm.
So the boat has now arrived in port, and I get to see it tomorrow.
I think that's amazing that, in the couple of years I've known you, like you've just really become this face for this movement. It's pretty impressive.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's I had the opportunity to speak with the owner of Cafe William last week and was really impressed with how long all of these cool things that I just described have been in process.
Hmm.
It's taken many years to get to this point. And what I appreciated about what he said about it was so many companies tell us what they're going to do, they're doing it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's again, it's leading by example. If this small brand can do this, then there's no reason why H&M or Unilever or whomever can't be doing this.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things you had mentioned one time before too is about bulk buying. You actually mention it every time. In Natick now they do have a bulk buy store,
Mm,
which is a town over from us. So
okay.
if anybody's looking for, you go there with your containers, they weigh the container, you put the stuff in it, and you buy it like that. And so you don't have to worry about it. It's a lot less waste, a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely check that out. I can't remember, was this called like Mama's Grocery or something like that? If anybody knows, let us know in the chat. Kate asks, are there other thought leaders in the zero waste movement that you'd recommend we follow? Because what I love about you, Sarah, is like you're very down to earth. Like if you
Mm.
can do it, do it. Be the best you can, but like don't give yourself some grace too. Are there other
Yeah,
people that we can like look to as well?
sure. Oh yeah, Mom's Organic Market. I've heard of that. Okay.
The
Um,
Natick now too.
yeah, I personally love following what I would call climate optimists.
Mhm.
So folks that are like, we can do this. We have all of the strategies that we need. Let's get moving. So I really like Dr. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson.
Mhm.
She recently released a book called "What If We Get It Right," which I love. That
Mhm.
regardless, by implementing these climate solutions, we build a better world.
Mhm. Love it.
I really like a fellow called Isaiah Hernandez. He's at Queer Brown Vegan. He talks a lot about climate justice, which I really appreciate and has an interesting lens on it. And I also love a climate scientist called Catherine Hayhoe. You can find her at Talking Climate. And she's a climate scientist who is optimistic about where we can go from here, that we are at a turning point and we have a real opportunity. So
Mhm.
it's not necessarily zero waste, it's more holistic.
Mhm.
But we were talking about the hurricanes before we started this tonight, you and I, and there's just so much doomism, and we're seeing it, and many folks are living it, and it's devastating. And rather than throwing up our hands and saying, well, it doesn't matter if I use wrapping paper or not, I like to follow these folks who are like, what you do does matter. We can do this.
Mhm.
We are creating a movement, and we can really push for change that can be implemented very quickly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, we just have to do it. So
Yep.
Lisa says at Mom's Organic Market, of course, and then in Beverly we have Roberta says in Beverly we have Unwrapped Living where we bring our own containers for laundry, detergents, shampoo, etc. And they sell those
Yeah.
in forms of bars, which I have also started buying, which I think is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Mary has asked what kind of products are available in bulk stores, and I mean the ones near you, Sarah, have pretty much everything, right?
Yes, we are blessed with Bulk Barn, um, which is across Canada, and they have everything except, interestingly, soaps. They have bar soap, but they don't have liquid laundry detergent, shampoo, things like that. But they have spices, which is where I'm getting the star anise and the cloves and the cinnamon and things like that. Typically, bulk stores will have baking supplies, dried lentils and beans, pasta, things like that. Some spices. It really depends on your market, but I wish you had bulk barn.
We don't have Bulk Barn, but I think I haven't been to Mom's Organic Market, but I think I've heard that they have things like oils and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, oh my gosh, like lotions and things like that that you
Yeah.
can buy in bulk instead of like buying in plastic. So,
Yeah. And typically, those products are made by small brands
mhm.
that are local. The two refill stores in my town that have that type of thing, lotion and shampoo and detergent, they're both small businesses that are woman owned, um, things like that. And they stock Canadian brands that are local or as local as possible, that are made with sustainable ingredients, like all that kind of stuff. So it can be more expensive depending on what you're buying, but you are also purchasing a better product.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Um,
supporting small business.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about that earlier that we wanted to start going to like farmers markets more or like the local
Mm-hmm.
farms because the food just tastes better.
Yep.
Aside from not buying from big bulk stores, whatever, that the food just tastes so much better. So we need to do more of that as well.
Yeah.
Um, all
I
right.
know grocery prices right now are completely out of control. We're having the same thing happening here. So do what you can, buy less. You won't run out of food, I promise.
Marianne wants me to plug the library because books used multiple times, library of things. You don't have to buy things you use only once. And I did put in the chat that we are having a costume swap all through October. So
That's
bring in
awesome.
costumes, take some new costumes, new to you costumes, and we'll all save the world a little bit at a time. Got the Earth Breeze detergent sheets. They're
Mm-hmm.
great. I love those as well. So Sarah, thank you once again. I know you have a dinner to get to, so I didn't want to keep you, but I appreciate all of your advice and you will be hearing from me again because I just think you're awesome. And you learn
Absolutely. I'd love to do another one. Yeah. And just email me, send me a DM, whatever it is, any question that you might have. I'm happy to point you to more information.
it is true. I have contacted her before and asked questions about things, so definitely contact her. Sarah,
Yeah.
have a wonderful night. For all of you
You too.
climate warriors out there and sustainability warriors, I hope that you take this to heart and make some changes that work for you. And
Yeah.
I will see you all soon, I hope.
Thank you so much for coming.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.